Today was obviously a very aggressive day. Another one, we've had plenty recently. And I'm gonna do today's video a little differently than I typically do it. I do all videos unscripted, impromptu. I think about what's important during that day. I spend the entire day in front of the computer thinking about the market. I know what I'm thinking about that day. Sometimes I leave a couple things out. It is what it is. Today, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to read some important things I'm discussing with clients and share them with you. My clients have very vested interest in how I'm performing, and they're pushing me quite hard right now. They want to get to the bottom of my thinking and make sure I'm on the right track, or that I'm at least thinking about things and have strategy on things. So I think this is a rather insightful video because these are very much scripted and thought about things. I don't just text my clients unscripted virtually. They text me with points. They think about their points. I think about my responses to those points. I get pictures, graphs, all these kinds of things. These are very in-depth, high intensity, search or truth searching conversations. And I want to share those in these videos because I think it's the right time to do this kind of thing on a day like today. So I'm not going to read this entire conversation. It's quite long. But first thing that I say is somewhat controversial. And I think a lot of people are fearful around the economic environment, and I understand why. And it's certainly possible that the economy can deteriorate significantly. However, I lay out a case in which I think the economy may not deteriorate. And we'll see if it ends up being correct, but I'm going to lay out my logic now. In my opinion, macro isn't deteriorating. Unemployment rate near record lows and still falling. A 3.5% unemployment rate and 1.9 jobs for every unemployed person are not signs of a poor or deteriorating economic environment. What people are fearful of is a Fed-induced recession. Rates are very low, even at 3%, but they're not. But now they're below 3%, and 75 basis points has been taken off the table. 3% basically prices in all forecast Fed tightening. Everyone knows it's coming. Bullard, the most hawkish member of the Fed, said this much about the bond market. He said that was true. The bond market was anticipating all the future Fed rate hikes, and that it was accurately pricing in what the Fed was going to do. The stock market has repriced for a hard landing, but we're not getting it yet anywhere else except the stock market. Not saying it's impossible, but I don't see any signs that we're getting it. Rates were above 3%, and we saw a slight fall in used car prices. Employment stayed strong. The biggest concern I have is China closures and their effect on supply chain. Hopefully those end soon. If they do, hopefully we get some relief from that. We saw month over month fall to 3.3% inflation without that. That was today's CPI report. Was hotter than expected, but last month we had 1.2% month on month. This month we have 0.3% month on month. We're going to get into that and go over what February's was before that 1.2% in the next conversation. This one is just quite long, this whole conversation. If we get it, we can see some improvement. I really don't think the economic environment is deteriorating. Not saying it won't deteriorate, but it isn't yet. We want to be ahead of things, not behind. And I do think we are ahead of things by saying the economic environment isn't deteriorating and ignoring the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That is conversation number one. Conversation number two. A client of mine sends me a conversation he's having with, as he says, my buddy owns hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate. If rates went that high, prices would see around a 50% decline. What did his friend say? What do you think about all this stuff? Pacific Premier Bank, who I do a lot of business with, is forecasting commercial interest rates to be at 8 to 9% by summer. One thing about banks and interest rates, I'm not trying to cast doubt on this bank at all. Banks make more money when interest rates are higher. Just one thing to know. So that's what he says. He sends me the screenshot of the conversation. I say, we'll see what happens. Looks like inflation may be peaking, especially if China ends their lockdown soon. Fed has taken 75 basis points off the table, and the most hawkish end of the Fed funds rate is around 3.5%. I think it's unlikely that they get that high, but that's Bullard's hope, the most hawkish member. 10-year got above 3% in anticipation of that, pricing in almost all the tightening, according to Bullard. So I think whatever you saw in the real estate market around the end of last month, or whatever it will be with the lag, will be the worst of it. My uncle, who's the head of global syndicate for JP Morgan, seems to think touch or go through 3% and then pull back. And so far he's been right. But we'll see what happens. Plenty of time between now and next year. I say maybe peaking because we went 0.8% month on month, 1.2% month on month, and then 0.3% month on month. If China comes on, maybe we can get to zero. Then my friend says, real estate hasn't felt a thing yet. Pain is coming. Will be 6 months, then pain. I say, interesting. He says, such a lagging thing. I say, stock market has seen the pain. Second worst start to the year ever. Each of the top 5, besides this one, still to be decided, the market has finished up from the lows. The lows of day 83 when the data I saw was released. I attached a screenshot. We moved from third worst to second worst since the data. So let me clear this up. I have a screenshot of the top 5 S&P 500 worst starts of all time. This screenshot is a freeze frame of data 83 days into the trading year. This was probably about 2 weeks ago. The S&P 500 was down 13.3%. The worst, 1932, down 28.2%. Second worst, that was the Great Depression, but towards the end of the Great Depression. Second worst start to the year, 1939, down 17.4%. Third worst, 2022, at the time 13.3, now 17.9, putting us in more accurate data at second. Fourth worst, 1942, 11.9%. 1970, down 11.1%. Now, the gains they all saw, 1932 from day 83, we're now maybe day 90 something we'll call it, up 18.7%, 1939 up 14%, 1942 up 27.5%, and 1970 up 12.6%. We'll see in hindsight, of course, what 2022 ends up being. It's now the second worst start to the S&P 500 in history. 27% down for the NASDAQ year to date. He sends me a screenshot of the S&P 500 Google search max. We're still pretty high compared to after the financial crisis, so there could be some more selling. This is something I think many people are thinking, and totally understandable. You look at any chart of the S&P 500 and you're trying to compare to history. We always have to look to history to understand where the future is going. As Ray Dalio says, one of the greatest hedge fund managers of all time, that's exactly what he does, goes to history. However, there's one crucial thing underlying all of that. What is stocks? Stocks are a certificate of future cash flows. So I show him a picture of Apple's revenue up until 2019. Now I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to try and flip my I can't flip my computer around. Look up on Google Apple earnings or revenue. You can pick. They're going to be quite similar. Chart, and look for a chart that has 1999, 2000, etc., etc., etc. every year, and then a bar. You will see when you see that chart and you understand and remember what a stock actually is, that certificate to future revenues, cash flows, etc., that it will help you understand why that all-time S&P 500 chart looks so overpriced and is actually misleading. So insert chart here. So are earnings and revenue, is my response after attaching the chart. Definitely can be more selling. We'll have to see what happens. There are some certainly good prices and some not so good. That Apple data doesn't include 2020 to 2022. The data I provided, that data is quite strong. They've experienced massive growth since. Same with Amazon, which is now below their pre-pandemic peak. Then I attach a chart of the FANG stocks as a pie chart relative to the S&P 500 in terms of weighting. And you will see those stocks take up about a third. I don't know the exact number. It's quite large. They are the S&P 500, if you want to say. People, you could say that and nobody is going to stop taking you seriously for saying that. As a matter of fact, they might actually take you a little more seriously because you said that. And then finally, I sent him a picture of the picture that is featured as the tile screen of this video. I haven't been doing anything else except the typical formatting I have. And it's the S&P 500 earnings multiple, which is the lowest in years and the lowest since roughly 2011, 2012, the recovery of the 08-09 recession. If we get to the lows of the 08-09 recession, you got to buy hand and fist, lever up on margin, because that was a historic buying opportunity, the lows before a 10-year massive bull run. We're not quite there yet, but we're way closer to those levels than we are to the peak. Just something to keep in mind. These are the conversations I'm having with my clients. I hope they provide you with some insight. There's a lot of back and forth going on here, but I think there's a lot of digging for the truth, and I hope that provides you value. So this is today's video, and until next time, peace out.